Now, once the limitations of first law have been discussed, we move on to the second law of thermodynamics. The first law, as already told, deals with the quantities of energy only and does not put a restriction on the direction of the process. The second law puts the restriction that a process can proceed in a particular direction only, and the second law defines the quality of the energy also. For any thermodynamic process to take place, both the first and second laws have to be satisfied. Now, what we mean by quality of the energy? The sun is giving lot of heat, the coal we burn, it gives heat, the petroleum or diesel when they are burnt, they also give heat. Then what is the quality that we mean? Heat is heat, but it is not like this. Cost of a particular energy depends on its quality. The heat from sun is available free of cost, but it cannot be converted into mechanical energy, whereas the heat from other sources, the agricultural produce, can be converted into work, but the cost of those agricultural produce is low, because the rate of conversion of heat would be less, whereas if we use petroleum products or high cost products, the rate of conversion of energy would be high and therefore they cost more. Let me explain it with a simple example. Suppose there is a boy, he has got 100 friends, and these 100 friends go with him always to picnics, parties, anywhere they can have fun. But one day this boy fell ill and he was in trouble. He called those 100 boys, but nobody turned up. Another boy has got 50 friends, and again these 50 friends move around him, and in case of problem, when he called these 50 students, only 5 boys turned up. There is a third boy who has only 10 friends, and these when he was in trouble, he called those 10 friends, and all the 10 friends, they turned up. Now, who has more friends? The person who had 100 friends, or the person who had 50 friends, or the boy who had only 10 friends? I think the boy who had 10 friends has more friends, because all the 10 turned up and they were ready to help him, whereas the first man who had 100 friends, nobody came to help him. Therefore, the quality of friends the first person had is very poor, whereas the quality of the friends the last person had is much better. We can explain with the same theory the quality of energy. The solar energy, it cannot be converted, the rate of conversion may be 2%, 3% or 5%, and therefore it does not cost anything, whereas the fuel, the coal, when it is burnt, the efficiency of conversion could be 30% or 35%, it would cost more. Rate of conversion of heat from combustion of petrol or diesel is say 45% or like that, and therefore its cost is more. So, the cost, the quality of the energy determines the cost of that particular fuel, and there the quality matters. Quality is important along with the quantity, and also the direction of process is important, because we know that heat cannot flow from lower temperature to higher temperature, and therefore there must be a restriction put by laws of thermodynamics that heat can flow in a particular direction only. So, second law of thermodynamics takes care of all these two disadvantages or the two shortcomings of the first law of thermodynamics. To come to second law, let us define a few things. We need to explain what is a energy reservoir. A thermal energy reservoir is a heat source or a heat sink having a very large thermal capacity, which can exchange finite amount of energy without any change in temperature. The examples are ocean, river, atmosphere, cooling towers, or furnaces with temperature controllers. Say, let us take an example of ocean. To ocean, a large quantity of heat is rejected. The temperature of ocean is not going to change, because it has got a very large thermal capacity. Similarly, rivers, the certain quantity of heat is rejected into the river, the temperature of water is not going to change. Similarly, atmosphere, the temperature of atmosphere will not change if a finite quantity of heat is supplied to atmosphere. So, these are the universal thermal energy reservoirs, and they can be used as heat source or heat sink. It is necessary that the source and the sink of heat should have a constant temperature, and for that these thermal reservoirs can be used as source or sink. Then comes next the heat engine. What is a heat engine? Heat engine is a device which receives heat at a higher temperature and converts a part of this heat into work and rejects the remaining amount of heat at a lower temperature. It has been shown here. There is a heat source which is at a higher temperature. It gives away certain amount of heat to a device which is known as heat engine. This heat engine does certain quantity of work, and the rest, the sum of the heat is converted into work, and the rest of the heat is rejected to the heat sink. Say from a furnace, heat is supplied to the engine, and this engine after doing work rejects heat to another heat sink which is a river or atmosphere, right. It has been shown here. This is the heat source, the furnace giving heat to the power plant, and power plant rejecting heat to the heat sink, and certain amount of heat is being done. So, this is the heat engine, and say this is the heat source at a higher temperature giving heat to the heat engine and rejecting certain quantity of heat at a lower temperature, and certain amount of work is being done. Work done from first law of thermodynamics would be Q1 minus Q2. Total heat coming in minus total heat going out should be equal to work. That is the law of conservation of energy, and the total amount of work that has been done is defined by the term efficiency. Efficiency is work done divided by the energy supplied. W upon Q1 or Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q1. Work done has been written as Q1 minus Q2, and Q1 minus Q2 by Q1 is the efficiency, and this is 1 minus Q2 upon Q1. So, efficiency of a heat engine would be 1 minus Q2 upon Q1, and this would depend upon the temperature of the heat source and temperature of the heat sink. As the temperature of the heat available from the sun is very low, the efficiency would be very low, whereas the temperature of the energy that is available from combustion of oils or gases is very high, therefore, the efficiency would be much more, and that is why we say that the quality of fuel is different, or quality of heat source is different in two cases. The definition of second law has been provided by two statements. One is the Kelvin-Planck statement and the other is Clausius statement. Kelvin statement says that it is impossible to construct a device which will operate in a thermodynamic cycle and produce no effect other than raising of a weight and exchange of a heat with a single heat reservoir. It has been shown here. There is a heat source and a device. Now, Kelvin-Planck statement says that this cyclic device is not possible which will draw heat from a single heat reservoir and convert it into work. It is impossible to construct a device which operates in a thermodynamic cycle and produces no effect other than raising of a weight. Raising of a weight means doing work. with a single heat reservoir. So, this particular arrangement is not possible. If this arrangement would have been possible, the efficiency would have been 100%, because the whatever is the amount of heat supplied, that is converted into work, and therefore, the efficiency is 100%. This is impossible. So, Kelvin-Planck statement says that it is impossible to have a heat engine which has an efficiency of 100%, and therefore, what is possible? What is the possibility? For the heat engine to be possible, we have to reject heat, some of the heat, to heat sink. Heat is drawn from the heat source, some of it can be converted into work, all of it cannot be converted into work, some of it can be converted into work, and rest of it has to be rejected, and then only the system will work. The heat energy can be converted into work only if there is a heat sink. Without a heat sink, that means without two heat reservoirs, the engine will not work, the work cannot be done, and the efficiency will has to be less than 100% always. So, that is the Kelvin-Planck statement, and this statement defines the quality of energy. The other statement is Clausius statement. Clausius statement says that it is impossible to construct a device which will operate in a thermodynamic cycle and produce no effect other than transfer of heat from a cooler body to a hotter body. This shows that there is a cyclic device, and it is impossible to construct this device which will draw heat from a low temperature heat reservoir and deliver it to the high temperature heat reservoir. This is impossible. You cannot have a device like this. This device is impossible, and if this is to be done, what is necessary? If the heat is to be transferred from a low temperature heat reservoir to high temperature heat reservoir, this device has to have consume certain energy from external source. Work has to be supplied to this device, so that heat can be drawn from low temperature heat source and can be rejected to high temperature heat reservoir, and this forms the basis for all air conditioners and refrigerators. In refrigerators and air conditioners, heat is drawn at a lower temperature and it is rejected to the atmosphere, which is at a higher temperature than the refrigerator or an air conditioner. So, this is the law which gives direction to the energy flow. So, there are two statements, the Kelvin-Planck statement which defines the quality, and Clausius statement which gives direction to the process to take place. Now, these two statements are negative statements. Both these statements are negative statements. Both of them say that it is impossible to do something. It is impossible to construct a device that will draw heat from a heat reservoir and convert it into work, or it says that it is impossible to construct a device which will draw heat from a low temperature heat reservoir and give it to higher temperature heat reservoir. Both these statements are negative statements, and as these statements are negative statements, they cannot be proved mathematically. There is no mathematical proof that exists to prove these two statements, these two laws, but at the same time there is no single incidence found in the history of the universe where these statements could be violated, and once these statements cannot be violated, these statements are valid statements, and this has been proved subsequently. The two statements are equivalent also. Any device that violates any one of these statements also violates the other statement, and this can be proved as follows. Violation of Clausius statement is violation of Kelvin-Planck statement also. It has been shown here. Let us assume that the Clausius statement is violated. There is a device D1 which violates the Clausius statement, and there is device D2 which follows or obeys the Kelvin-Planck statement, and if this device is violating the Clausius statement, it will draw certain quantity of heat here, and without absorbing energy it will reject this heat at a higher temperature, and this device will draw certain amount of heat from high temperature, certain amount of work is done and rejects the remaining heat here. Now, these two devices operate between the same two heat reservoirs as shown here, and if the two are operating in this between the same two heat reservoirs, let us couple these two devices together. Okay. And if these two devices are coupled, we can say that certain quantity of heat is taken, certain quantity of heat is rejected, certain quantity of work is being done, that is okay as per Kelvin statement. Whatever is the amount of heat rejected here, the same amount of heat is drawn from the other device, certain and once this quantity of heat is taken from this and it is rejected to the high temperature heat reservoir, right. And once we have we are rejecting certain quantity of heat here and equal quantity of heat is absorbed here, the net amount of heat exchange from the low temperature heat reservoir is 0. So, we can say that certain quantity of heat is taken here, some work is done, whatever is the heat rejected, it goes to device D1 and this device D1 then rejects this heat to high temperature heat reservoir or directly to this, and therefore, the equivalent system becomes D1 plus D2 taken together are drawing certain quantity of heat Q1 minus Q2 from high temperature reservoir and doing the same amount of work here. So, that shows that if the Clausius statement is violated here, it is violating the Kelvin Planck statement also, and therefore, we can say that violation of Clausius statement is violation of Kelvin Planck statement also, right. But complete equivalence has not been set, it is the equivalence of Clausius statement to Kelvin Planck statement. Let us see, violation of Kelvin Planck statement is violation of Clausius statement also. Let us come to that. Say there is a device here which is violating the Kelvin Planck statement and another device that is following the Clausius statement here. It is taking certain quantity of energy here, certain work is being done and it is being some heat is rejected here, some heat is taken here and work is being done and heat rejected here is 0. Okay. And once the heat rejected here is 0, we can say that heat is being taken here, some work is being done, that work is being supplied to the device D1. This device D1 with this work that is being supplied by this engine takes heat from low temperature heat reservoir and pumps it to high temperature heat reservoir, right. So, Kelvin Planck statement was violated here, but Clausius statement is it holds, and once Clausius statement holds, it is taking heat, certain work is being done on this and some heat is being rejected, whereas the device D2 draws the heat from this device and the work is being supplied to this, and that shows that if the two devices taken together, the work requirement from the outer source is not there, whatever is the heat taken from this is rejected here. So, the Kelvin Planck statement is violated here and that results in violation of Clausius statement, and therefore, we can say that we have proved that violation of Clausius statement means violation of Kelvin Planck statement, and violation of Kelvin Planck statement also means violation of Clausius statement, and therefore, the two statements are completely equivalent. So, this is the second law of thermodynamics, and this second law of thermodynamics then takes care of the drawbacks or limitations of first law of thermodynamics. Now, we come to the next part of it, that is the reversible process. Now, a reversible process is defined as a process which once having taken place can be reversed and leaves no change either in the system or the surroundings. The thermodynamic process we have already defined, it is the system moving from one state to the other state. From this state, if the system moves to this state, this is a thermodynamic process. A thermodynamic process is reversible when say it has moved from this point to this point, and if it goes back from this point to this point, it leaves no effect either on the system or on the surroundings, and then only we say that the process is a reversible process. Here you can see the system moves from this point to this point, from this point to this point, this point to this point, it has been shown here. Okay. And once it is reversed, the system moves from again from this point to this point, then this point to this point, and it goes back. And what we see that the pressure initially was P, finally after the process has been reversed, the pressure is the same, the temperature and the other properties of the system are the same. The work that has been done in the forward process has been absorbed in the reverse process. So, it is leaving no effect onto the system or the surroundings. Whatever is the work done during the forward process, it is being consumed in the reverse direction. Whatever is the heat that was absorbed in the forward direction has been absorbed in the reverse direction, and therefore, absolutely the work transfer, heat transfer, they are 0. There is no change in the state after reversing, and therefore, there is no effect left on the system or the surroundings when the process is reversed, and this type of processes are known as reversible processes. There are processes which are irreversible processes, and those processes, the process becomes irreversible because of the friction, because of the finite temperature gradient. When the heat is supplied and rejected, the temperature gradient is there. If there is a free expansion, or if the process is non quasi static process, then the process will not be a reversible process, otherwise the process would be a reversible process. And this is very important from the point of view of thermodynamic analysis. We must know if the process is reversible process or is a irreversible process, because irreversible process consists of many losses which we will have to take care of, and irreversible processes, they do not have those losses, and therefore, they are ideal processes. Now, we proceed further and come to the next part of the lecture, that is a Carnot cycle. A Carnot cycle consists of 4 reversible processes, and it is considered to be the most efficient thermodynamic cycle. A Carnot cycle has been shown here. It consists of 4 processes. The process 1-2 isothermal heat addition process, process 2-3 adiabatic expansion process, process 3-4 an isothermal heat rejection process, and process 4-1 a adiabatic compression process. As shown here, 1-2 it is isothermal heat addition, 2-3 it is adiabatic expansion process, 3-4 it is isothermal heat rejection process, and 4-1 is adiabatic compression process. The processes have been shown in an actual device here. Say this is a piston and cylinder arrangement which contains certain working fluid, a gas, air, for example air, in this system as shown here, and this system is is at a particular temperature. A source is brought at the same temperature as the temperature of the gas, and heat is supplied at constant temperature to the gas. Once heat is when the gas expands, there would be a infinitesimal small drop in temperature, and because of that drop in temperature, heat will flow from the source into the gas, and this gas would start expanding. It expands up to this point as shown here, and once it has moved isothermally from point 1 to point 2, at this point 2 the heat source is removed, and the cylinder head is insulated. The whole of this system is insulated from the external media, and therefore, no heat can now enter, but because of the temperature, the expansion would continue till it reaches the outer dead center position. The piston reaches the outer dead center position, and at this point when it is at the outermost point, the compression would start. Whatever is the temperature of the gas at this point, a heat sink is brought which is at the same temperature as the temperature of the gas, and heat is rejected at constant temperature to the heat sink, and this continues till it reaches point 4. This is point 4, and at 4 the heat sink is removed, and again the system is insulated from outside, and whatever expansion takes the compression takes place, that takes place adiabatically, and finally we reach point 1 after the compression is complete. That is how the whole the cycle is completed 1, 2, 3, 4 in a Carnot system, and in this process we find that certain amount of work has been done. The work done is equal to the total area of the Carnot cycle, and the total heat supplied is the amount of heat that has been supplied during the isothermal expansion process, and the amount of heat that has been rejected is isothermal heat rejection process. So, during the process 1, 2 heat has been supplied here, and during process 3, 4 heat has been rejected. The total amount of heat supplied is QH, total amount of heat rejected is QL. From the principle of energy conservation, the total work done would be QH minus QL divide, and the efficiency would be the work done divided by heat supplied, QL minus QH minus QL upon QH, that is 1 minus QL upon QH. This is the efficiency of a Carnot cycle, and this is the maximum efficiency that a device can have in thermodynamics, right. So, now we come to corollaries of the second law, and the first corollary is the Carnot principle. Carnot principle is that it is impossible to construct an engine to work between two heat reservoirs, each having a fixed and uniform temperature, which will exceed in efficiency a reversible engine working between the same two heat reservoirs. In simple words, we can say that it is impossible to have a irreversible engine which would have efficiency more than a reversible engine working between the same two heat reservoirs. Let me explain it. Suppose there are two heat reservoirs, high temperature and low temperature heat reservoirs, and there are two devices. One is a irreversible device and the other is a reversible device. Irreversible device I, reversible device R, working in thermodynamic cycles. Both of them are supplied with certain quantity of heat QH here and QH here, and they would reject certain amount of heat to the low temperature heat sink. This is source and this is sink. Some work would be some of the energy would be converted into work, and this we call as work irreversible, and this device would convert certain amount of heat which is known as work reversible. The corollary says that it is impossible that efficiency of I would be greater than efficiency of R. This is the corollary. Let us assume efficiency of I is more than efficiency of R. If efficiency of I is more than efficiency of R, work done by this engine would be more than work of a reversible engine. And what is work irreversible? It is QH minus QL minus QL dash. Now, if the efficiency of this engine is more than this quantity would be more than this quantity, and QL would be less than QL dash. Definitely, because it is converting more heat into work, therefore, the heat rejected would be less than the heat rejected by this engine, and once this engine is rejecting less heat than this engine is a reversible engine, it can be reversed in direction, and if this engine is reversed in direction, what will happen? reversible engine can be reversed in direction, as we have discussed just now reversible processes, and once it is reversed, instead of giving work here, an equal amount of work will be consumed by this. This will draw a heat equal to QL dash and reject heat which is equal to QH, because this is a reversible engine, this is possible. And if this happens, the work irreversible being more than work reversible, this amount of work can be obtained from this. This is work reversible, and the net output would be work irreversible minus work reversible, right. Now this amount of heat is equal, and therefore there is no need of a heat sink here. Whatever is the heat rejected would be used to drive this irreversible device. Okay. Now this whole combination becomes like, it is drawing certain amount of heat QL dash minus QL from a single heat reservoir and doing some amount of work which is equal to QL dash minus QL. This violates the Kelvin Planck statement. It is drawing heat from a single heat reservoir and doing certain amount of work. So whatever assumption we had made that the efficiency of this engine could be greater than this engine is not valid, and therefore we can say that the corollary 1 is true, that the efficiency of irreversible engine can never be more than the efficiency of reversible engine if the two are working between the same temperature limits, right. So that is the corollary 1. This is shown here. Heat is drawn QL minus QL dash to a single device, and it is doing certain amount of work, that has been shown here. Then we come to the next corollary, corollary 2. Corollary 2 says that the efficiencies of all reversible engines operating between the same heat reservoirs are the same. This is reversible device R1, this is reversible device R2. These two devices are working between this same two heat reservoirs at temperatures TH and TL, and these two heat engines, when they are working between these two heat reservoirs, they have different efficiencies. Efficiency of R1, let us assume, is greater than efficiency of R2. And if efficiency of R1 is greater than efficiency of R2, the work done by this would be QH minus QL1, work done by this engine would be QH minus QL2, and efficiency of this engine being more, this quantity of work would be more than this quantity of work. This heat rejected by this engine would be less than the quantity of heat rejected by this. Now again, let us, by the same logic, let us reverse this engine, and if this engine is reversed, the system would become as shown here. The efficiencies, the engines are reversed. This engine, if it is reversed, it will draw heat here and reject heat here, and the work that is required by this engine would be drawn from the other reversible engine, and part of the work output would be used to drive this heat engine now, which has been reversed, and therefore the combination of the two engines would be R1 plus R2 as we have done in the earlier case, and they will draw certain amount of heat QL2 minus QL1 and the amount of work output would be QL2 minus QL1. Again this violates the Kelvin Planck statement, and therefore, the assumption that we have made that efficiency of one of the engines would be greater than the efficiency of other engine is not correct, and therefore, we can say that efficiency of all the reversible engines operating between the same two heat reservoirs will always be the same. So, it is the temperature of the two heat reservoirs that is mainly responsible for the efficiency of the engine and not the device itself. Then third corollary says that the efficiency of all reversible engines operating between the same two heat reservoirs is independent of the nature of the working fluid and depends only on the temperature of the heat reservoirs. We have just now discussed the two corollaries, and the logic would be the same to prove the third corollary also. The efficiency of the device would depend upon the temperature of the heat source and heat sink only, and not the working substance. Suppose one of the engines is working with water as working fluid, the other engine is working with air as working fluid, it will not matter. The efficiencies would be the same till the temperatures of the two heat reservoirs are the same. Then comes the next corollary, the thermodynamic temperature scale. It is one of the most important deductions of the second law of thermodynamics, and it says that a temperature scale may be defined which is independent of the nature of the thermometric substance. That is corollary of the second law of thermodynamics. Now, earlier it has been discussed that zeroth law of thermodynamics was discussed, and it was said that the thermal equilibrium can be used to define a system which would be able, which would make us able to measure the temperature using a thermometer. But that temperature that we measure with the help of zeroth law of thermodynamics depends on the thermometric substance, whether we use Celsius scale or Fahrenheit scale or mercury thermometer or alcohol thermometer. In thermodynamics, what is needed is that the temperature scale should be independent of the nature of the thermometric substance, and for that we have just now defined a we have just now stated a corollary which says that the efficiency of a reversible engine is independent of the nature of the thermometric working fluid. Now, we can make use of this concept. Suppose we have got a high temperature heat reservoir and a low temperature heat reservoir working at temperatures TH and TL, and we have reversible engines, say one reversible engine R1, R2 and R3. Now, say engine R1 is drawing heat at a temperature, high temperature heat reservoir equal to Q1, and it is rejecting heat to another reversible engine, and that reversible engine finally rejects heat Q3 to the low temperature heat reservoir, and this engine R2 draws certain amount of heat at the same heat reservoir and rejects it to the low temperature heat reservoir. The efficiency of these two engines taken together has to be equal to efficiency of this engine, because the efficiencies working of the engines working between these two heat reservoirs cannot be different, and that principle is made use of to prove it. Now, efficiency reversible as already it has been defined is equal to 1 minus QL upon QH, and this is a function of TH and TL, or QH upon QL is a function of TH and TL, right. This efficiency is function of heat and temperatures. Therefore, we can write that Q1 by Q2 would be equal to function of T1 and T2, and Q2 by Q3 would be a function of T2 and T3, and Q1 upon Q3 would be a function of T1 and T3. Now, we can write Q1 by Q3 is equal to Q1 by Q2 into Q2 by Q3. That is obvious, Q2 goes off and it is Q1 by Q3. So, Q1 by Q3 would be equal to product of these two quantities. Q1 by Q3 is equal to function of T1 by T3, we substitute it here, Q1 by Q2 we substitute here, and Q2 by Q3 we substitute from here. Now, the left hand side consists of two parameters T1 and T3, whereas this side has got three properties T1, T2, T2, T3. Now, they have to be equal, and therefore, this side should not have this parameter T2, it must be eliminated, and that has to be taken care of, and therefore, we have to say that function T1 by T2 has to be another function of T1 by T2, function T2 T3 should be equal to another function T2 by T3, and T1 Q1 by Q3 should be a function of T1 by T3, and then only that is possible. Q1 by Q3 would be equal to function of T1 by T3, and Lord Kelvin then proposed a functional relation between Q1 by Q3. He said that this Q1 by Q3 should be equal to phi T1 by phi T3, and this functional relationship that has been proposed by Lord Kelvin is that they should be equal to T1 by T3. This linear relationship was proposed by Lord Kelvin, and this is known as the thermodynamic temperature scale or absolute temperature scale or Kelvin temperature scale after his name, and this gives us a basis for measurement of temperature in thermodynamics, and this thermodynamic temperature is a property of the system. The degree Fahrenheit or degree centigrade is not the property of a system or substance, whereas this temperature is a property of the substance. If we want to measure temperature with the help of this temperature scale, we do not have to use a thermometer, but definitely it is not possible to carry a Carnot engine or a reversible engine for measurement of temperature in practice, and therefore, we have to have a simple device for measurement of temperature, and for that a conference was held for conference of weights and measures was held in Geneva in 1954, and there it was proposed that this temperature triple point of water was assigned a value of 273.15 on the Kelvin scale, and this difference of absolute 0 and triple point of water was divided in 273.15 divisions, and that gives us the reading on a thermometric scale. Absolute 0 and 273 divided in 273.15 divisions would give us 1 Kelvin, the measure of temperature, and this 1 Kelvin is equal to 1 degree centigrade on a thermometer. Whatever type of thermometer we may use 1 degree centigrade is taken as 1 Kelvin, and the Kelvin on the Kelvin scale absolute 0 is there, and triple point of water has been assigned a value of 273.15, and accordingly the scale the temperature scale that has been available to us is known as Kelvin temperature scale. Now, we would proceed with the next topics in the subsequent lectures on entropy, availability and other topics of thermodynamics.